Hello, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Classics Show. I am your host, Shabnam, Riaz. Okay, today we have a very special program lined up for you, and this is all in relevance with, last month celebration of World Poetry Day that took place in March. And, on that day we saw various organizations getting together and people highlighting the importance of poetry and what it actually means and what is its relevance in today's life. So, to discuss this subject, we're very happy to have with us in the studios today one of the faces of PTV, award-winning anchor, broadcaster, and recently turned author, Mazhar Nisar. Mazhar, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Shabnam. It's an honor to be here, and it's wonderful being on the Classics Show. I have been following this program keenly for quite some time, and it's great to be part of it today.
Wonderful. The pleasure is likewise. It's fantastic to have you on the show. And before we go on any further, I'll tell you that this is the book that Mazhar has, recently published. It's called The Mahogany Junction, and it is a collection of poems, and we're going to hear about that, the book itself, how it came into being, and what inspires you as a poet. But let's start from the beginning. As I said in the introduction, World Poetry Day was observed last month. Are people understanding in today's day and age the relevance and the importance of poetry as it is?
Yes, thank you, Shabnam, and I think this is a very important question, a question that needs to be addressed, and it is an issue that needs to be deliberated and discussed at length. In today's world, when we see there is a cobweb of narratives, of manufactured truth, of half-truths, untruths, and then of course there are established notions. There are ideas and concepts that we have embraced for long without questioning them. And I think poetry helps put things in perspective. It helps us introduce some original thinking. It helps us to challenge what we've embraced for long. And I think in those terms, poetry is very relevant. It is relevant to our times, in a society where you see there is now shrinking space for divergent views, and there is shrinking space for radical views also. I think poetry is an important medium, because through poetry you could convey ideas that at times you can't convey through prose. So that makes poetry, expression in poetry, a very important medium.
Absolutely. As you just mentioned, the truth, the quest for seeking the truth, and to, instead of having that pre-packaged material that you're all the recipients of, and you're facing and everything, the actual phenomena of getting a person to think out of the box, to use that critical thinking, and to challenge mindsets. Those are the things that you very rightly
absolutely.
observed.
You see, Shabnam, it's very unfortunate, because you see, when you look at a number of these media outlets that kind of push a certain agenda, push a certain narrative, and also you see we don't when we are teaching children, we don't teach them to think. We don't teach them to wonder. And because that's very important for human advancement. I think there is a manufactured, as I said, or tailored narrative. There is an objective that we want to achieve. It's like I mean, from the industrialized age, it's like we are just producing products, en masse, and teaching them the same thing. And
because we're comfortable with it as well.
We are comfortable with it, and it suits our end objective.
Right.
So, but then it turns them into products and not thinking, wondering individuals.
So if we take that, a step further from another angle, what are we scared of our children asking us then?
Well, we are scared of the difficult questions to which we don't have the answers.
Right.
And that's why we don't want them to ask those questions.
Right.
And that's why we don't want them to think.
Right.
Yeah. So if they think, if they wonder, they might end up questioning established ideas that we are comfortable with for long, and that we have imbibed and inherited from our forefathers. So we don't want them to ask those questions because at times as a society we're not prepared to ask those questions even if we actually already know the answer.
Right. So, okay, so there's a bit of courage there as well, you know,
Yes,
the courage to be able to, one, look for the truth, seek it, and then to be able to accept or embrace it.
Absolutely.
Poetry is very powerful. Before you published your book, what was the most powerful thing for you about poetry? What attracted you towards it?
Yeah, I think, as I said, you see, poetry is a medium in which we could actually at times say things that we can't even imagine saying in prose. So poetry was an expression that allowed me to say what I was saying in my muted silence. So if there was one medium through which my soul could speak, it was poetry. Otherwise one says a lot of things. One thinks and then says a lot of things, but then these are things that you say because you feel them, and poetry is the medium where you could say what you actually felt in an experience, which you would otherwise shy away from saying. And poetry gives you the space and the allowance and the license to express yourself in that manner.
I love the phrase that when your soul is speaking, and then you're actually able to deal with those questions. Again, we were coming back to the same thing. All those questions that are stirring inside, they need answers. The soul is restless. The soul is restless, and in many creative people, we will find a common denominator of restlessness that compels you to write, to paint, to compose music. So everyone has a restless soul. So in other words, creativity then is very, very important in one form or the other.
Absolutely. I think to be able to, I think this is something that is divine, creation itself. And anybody who is into the process of creativity is actually accomplishing that divine mission, and so therefore it's vitally important. And I think the best part, as I said, about poetry is that you can actually, from what your soul is saying, you can actually come up with a body of work, which can be shared with others, and which can actually stir conversations, a discourse, make people think. Absolutely. And I think, if you ask me that what would be the objective that I would, kind of intend to achieve through putting together, a volume of poetry, I think the end objective would be to just make people think, because they don't. Because each day of their lives, they accept what others think for them, and they act on it. And
which is very dangerous.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. So to stir that thinking process and to allow people to think about things that they have just accepted always, as established ideas.
Okay, so, another thing here, we're giving our children an education, we ourselves, acquiring various degrees. But how educated are we really? The importance of bringing everyone, young, old, professional, whatever, the stay-at-home mum, the importance of bringing a person back to literature. How, what degree is that, and how can it be addressed?
Well, you see, when it comes to children, there is so much, of demands on them to learn that see, we at times lose sight of the importance of unlearning. Which is actually the most important part of a learning process.
That is
Unless
amazing.
you've unlearned, you just can't learn.
Unlearn what?
Unlearn what has been established. What has been, what does science do? Science establishes, science challenges the established ideas. Science reinvestigates, So that unlearning process is very important, that you let go of information that might be based on facts in the past, but then now you're presented with new facts. So unless you let go of those ideas and those facts, you cannot create space for learning. And that is where the problem lies, So we do not teach our children to unlearn.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And then relearn, Often we see that, based on, hearsay, or based on based on information that is passed on to us, we hang on to a certain idea, and when presented with facts that are more powerful than the ideas that we harbor, we do not change our position on an issue, right. Which is not how science kind of operates. In science, when you are presented with new facts, the entire concepts change, the theories change. So therefore, I think the most important part is unlearning and then relearning. That is something that we need to teach our children. And as we discussed a few moments back, that poetry is a very powerful medium. It can really stir that thinking process, and then take you on this great journey. You can revel in this great journey of unlearning and relearning.
Okay, fantastic. It's sort of a decluttering of the soul as well, isn't it? You're decluttering inside, making space for other things as well. Okay, now tell us about your book, and you've also been reading at schools and colleges. What is the feedback that you've been getting over there?
No, I think it's been excellent. I have been to different schools and colleges in Islamabad, both public sector and private sector institutions, and I think the response has been phenomenal. Some of the ideas that I've shared through my poetry were received with a great deal of enthusiasm by the students, and also I think I have been able to kind of present ideas that they identified with. That's very important.
Okay.
To reach out to young people and to communicate with them, it's important to touch upon subjects that they are interested in.
Absolutely.
And
speak their language.
Yeah, absolutely, and be on platforms that they subscribe to, and that's very important. So I realized that if you reach out to them rather than waiting for them to reach out to you, and being passive, I think when you're there, when you talk to them, you do feel that it's not as hopeless as people would think it is.
Yes, absolutely. And the power of poetry, the words, that centuries before have been written down, timeless literature that we quote often. And sometimes, automatically to a certain situation, you'll be able to fit a certain verse or a poet or whatever they've said. That is also, phenomenal as well. What are some of your favorites, your favorite poets and your favorite verses? What speaks to your soul?
Well, you see, I'm a great fan of W.B. Yeats and Shelley, and I mean, the Ode to the Westerly Wind was a poem that would always inspire me, and also, of course, I have had some reading of some Urdu poetry, in my younger days. So yes, mostly revolutionary poetry, love poetry, poetry that speaks about the nature, its beauty, is poetry that has always inspired me.
Right. Okay. So just to share a few parts of the poetry that have been very, very famous, and just to talk about those. Emily Dickinson, because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves, and immortality. Again, just a few.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And then, as you said, it's just that whole platform. Okay, you've unlocked a door.
Yes, absolutely.
So who's going to reap what they want from there?
Oh yes,
isn't
absolutely.
It? And then, and when wind and winter harden all the loveless land, it will whisper of the garden, you will understand. and that's Oscar Wilde.
Oh, yes.
So again, you know, words like that. Okay, do you think that the media, because we were talking, you know, before about the media, do you think it's paying enough attention towards getting people back into literature? And first of all, you have to get a nation into a mood for something.
Yeah, I think you see there is so much of overflow of information that is being shared that there is little space for going beyond the veneer of this you know, this cobweb of information that we have. There is a great rat race to get information to us, you know, before the others. You know, this breaking news culture, and then there's this entire issue of ratings. So you know, in this entire competition, I think this deep thinking, you know, is lost somewhere, and we need to bring people back to deep thinking. You know, to look within themselves and to reinvestigate their behaviors, their interactions with people, and then you know, we can also suggest you know, course correction when we allow people the space to rethink and, you know, to indulge in this deep thinking process. I think the media channels should dedicate some time to it. I know PTV is. There are some shows. You know, I know that there's recently a show has been launched on the PTV, the Urdu channel, which talks about philosophy, which talks about deep thinking, looking within oneself. So those are the kind of programs that the channels should allocate space to, and because you see, they also have you know, an obligation to the society, and you know, so they have to really come out of this this race of ratings and, you know, getting information before the others.
Absolutely true. Okay, so you know, these are the things that we need to address, as you've said. Tell us about your book now, your poetic journey, and the feelings you have now that you've been able to publish your book.
Yeah, I think I mean, I have been you know, kind of trying my hands at poetry for a long time, but I think I actually, you know, I mean, I started crafting poems like around over 10, 11 years back. And you know, if you recall, I had also shared some poetry with you.
Absolutely.
And so you had encouraged me, because I wasn't too sure that if what I was writing, you know, was of any worth. But I think it was great that, you know, you had encouraged me, and with your encouragement,
I was very pleasantly surprised. I remember the first time I read your poem.
So with,
wow.
Yeah, so with your encouragement, I did then delve into this craft, and I think I have touched upon diverse subjects. Nature being my favorite, you know, the sound of nature, its whispering, its visual beauty, that really inspires me. And also, you see, you know, the prick of conscience, you know, its voice, you see, rejecting ideas that have been passed on to us for generations, questioning established notions, love. These are some of the major themes in my poetical work.
Right, a conscious, you know, raising a conscience in people. I mean, that seems to be something that we really are facing a challenge with nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. And that's why I think poetry is a very important kind of a mode of communication now, because I think there's so much that you could actually encapsule in a poem and then, you know, say.
Please do share. We'll listen to your poetry. Do share one of your favorites with us right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do give us a bit of a background. So that the viewers as well can, you know, those who are not familiar with your poetry yet can understand.
Yeah, this is the poem is titled "Who Am I?" and it asks the ultimate question, you know, that you know, who are we in this entire scheme of existence, and what do we mean to ourselves? What do we mean to other people? And how are we perceived by the society? Are we perceived as humans, or are we perceived as products? Yeah, that's the question that it
Fascinating
asks. Yeah.
question. Fascinating.
So, who am I? Who am I? Am I the fire that burns at a Sufi's abode, where devotees come in reverence to seek warmth for frostbitten souls and rekindle the flame within? They come in throngs from all directions and in all hues, to stop a while, but never to stay. Who am I? Am I the willow tree that gives shade to the jaded, but does not bear fruit? So when the sun mellows into a more merciful countenance, it is time to bid adieu. Who am I?
Wonderful. Beautiful. Now, a common theme that I've seen within your poetries is the sort of the Sufi and the soulful, again, the soul, the speaking of the soul. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think, you see, as I said, you see, if you indulge in deep thinking, if you ask the right questions, I think you don't really have to be a Sufi, and you don't have to be a mystic. I think this is how it should be in the first place. You see, I think we've lost track of that, as we went along. So it is always useful to stop a while and then to question, to think, to contemplate. And I think when we contemplate, we get some of the questions and of course then arrive at some of the answers. But I think to me the questions are more important than the answers. Because you see, nothing is ultimate, nothing is final.
Right.
It is asking the right questions. And if you delve into your soul, look into it deeply, and if you're able to ask the right questions, I think that gives you enlightenment, understanding. When you look within, it is only then that you're able and empowered to look without. That's very important.
So, what's the the nicest thing? It's something that's really inspired you after somebody has read your poems, and something that they've shared with you.
Well, you see, I mean, a lot of people have. I also run a page on which I share some of my work. So yes, a lot of people have told me that I have. Through my poetry, made them think about things that they, that they never noticed, that they never thought about, and it has kind of made them question themselves, made them question, their daily behavior, their interaction with their fellow human beings, and I think that makes me very happy, because. More than the fact that I would want people to read my work, I would really want them to question themselves, to think, and rethink and unlearn, as I said.
Which is very important.
Yes, so that's what I wanted. That makes me more happy.
Right, to peel away the layers.
Yes.
And to, as you mentioned before as well, to go beyond the superficialness.
Yes.
And take things into depth. Now, there's another poem of yours that I would like to read out. I really like this one; it's a favourite of mine as well. The Panorama. So, in the deafening noise of applause, we wear shackles and call them accolades, and hand the leash to the daily grind, till the medals have transformed into a noose. And from the restlessness of our bubble, we witness a panorama that our fingers long to touch, a fleeting vista, though within our reach, yet eludes our grasp. The nights drunk on moonlight, days kissed by the gentle breeze, evenings caressed by the Midas touch of a half-asleep sun, the aroma of autumn as it stops by to hold trees in a joyful embrace. And on occasions I had ventured out to steal pieces of them and hide them in the recesses of the soul, so when you come we can relish each moment unhindered by the bubble. That again, wonderful, fantastic. Can you explain to our, people who are watching,
yeah, thank you
what
so
this
much.
is?
Yeah, you see, the thing is that in this daily grind, we tend to lose sight of life. You know? And you see, we struggle, we toil to attain a status, to to pursue the material. But then in that entire process, we really are eventually on a leash. And then it is that leash that then decides our fate. So there is a yearning of the soul to break free of that incarceration, and then express itself, and steal those moments, those precious moments when you can be off the leash for a while. This poem is about the yearning of the soul to break free of the incarceration of the daily grind, which actually eventually ends up in us being on a leash of the life that we have built ourselves, which does not allow our soul to be joyful and happy.
Okay, so again, that's sort of irony for you, isn't it? Because what you actually are trying for is actually imprisoning you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is exactly the question that is being asked, and that is exactly the conflict that is going on. It is a conflict between what we've built for our joy and what the soul perceives as joy, which is entirely different.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
So we're near to the end of the program. Unfortunately, we've got so much to talk about. But I would like you to share one of your favorites in the book, and also a short message as well for everyone who's watching in regards to how they, if number one, if they think that they can write, what they can do to take that dream forward, and why people should be taking out the time to read poetry.
Yeah. This poem deals with, as I said, the conflict between the material world and the desire of the soul to break free from that incarceration. It's titled "Nothing Lasts Forever." Led astray for long by the quest to be, I have stumbled upon life's holy grail. One after the other, I consign the silken ropes to the fire. Unshackled from desire, I rejoice, I revel, I soar, I sing. I dust off the glitter, I fly, I flutter. I'm a feather, I'm the wind, I'm the child who never sinned. I wear the amulet from the shrine of nothing. I drink from its holy spring. For nothing will remain, for only nothing is forever. So this is the poem, Nothing Lasts Forever. And of course, as we mentioned, asks the same question, addresses the conflict between the the yearning of the soul.
It's a poem of liberation, isn't it? Yes, again, I mean, there's a lot of the chaining of the soul and the liberation from oneself that is also a recurrent theme in your poetry.
Yeah, that's why you see, poetry is an act of humility and courage at the same time.
Exactly.
And I think people, young people who would want to express themselves, express their ideas, and express what they feel deep inside. I think poetry is the right medium, and you can be a poet and be very courageous also. And I think all great poets are humble, but they are courageous. They ask the right questions. They make us think, rethink. They make us unlearn, as I said, and established notions are challenged through this medium of expression. So I think young people should really try their hands at this craft, and try and write whatever they can. I think one shouldn't be scared of criticism, and one should be courageous enough to express oneself. And I think, I mean, you see, I mean, when I talk about my own journey, you know, there were times that I was completely unsure about the quality of what I write.
Right.
But I think then, of course, you get a lot of guidance from people in this field, senior, you know, poets and writers and intellectuals. And I think it is really worth giving a try.
Fantastic. That's a wonderful message. Thank you so much, Mazhar, for being a guest with us on the Classics Show. Okay, and with that we come to the end of the program. A fantastic conversation there. You know, if you feel that you have it in you to write poetry, or not just poetry, prose, the main thing is, as Mazhar said, courage. Courage to pour out your inner feelings and put them on display for others, and have the courage to ask the right questions. So until next week, with that thought, see you. Bye-bye.